In this first example, we'll program a bass line, so let's start by plugging the CV AND gate of track 1 into the 303. By default, each track is monophonic and corresponds to a pair of CV gate, labeled from 1 to 8. Now let's input a note. And we hear it. Nice! Now, if I want to edit this note, I can hold it, press the encoder to select the parameter that I want to modify, and scroll to adjust. For example, the length. Nothing happens when I try to adjust the velocity because this track has no output for it yet. Let's quickly add one by modifying the voice layout. Layout configuration will be covered in an upcoming video dedicated to track mode. The second CV output is now linked to our track and outputs velocity. Let's connect it to the filter cutoff. Velocity values will be indicated by the intensity of the green LED. Okay, let's take a short break while I'm trying to come up with a decent bass line. By holding Y and scrolling, I'll double the length of my pattern to create a variation. Use X and Y to navigate between pages. Now to copy the first page onto the second one, let's click the encoder and copy the current page. Then we can go to the second page and paste it. Let's add a bit of variation to this pattern by editing a note. I'll start with pitch and add some velocity as well. By holding X and scrolling, I can zoom in and access a finer resolution of my grid. As you can see, I have now 4 pages that I can use to place notes very precisely. I also want new notes here. I'll make them very short. To modify several notes at a time, simply hold the first and the last step of your selection and make your adjustments. When a note is held, its content is automatically copied. Pressing any other step will paste it with its parameters. We can now zoom out to see all the steps that we've programmed on a single page. Let's also unmute this kick track coming from Rumple so we can hear this pattern in context. If I scroll the encoder while pressing it, I can shift all notes left or right. The shift increments will be related to the current zoom level. Now, let's connect the Atlantis to a new Hermod track and play a bit with the generator. I'll use the same layout as before, which is a mono voice for notes, plus an extra CV for velocity. I can generate some notes by holding step and pressing Y. Okay, that sounds terrible, but it should sound way better with a bit of help from the scale effects. There we go. Now, let's click the encoder to open the generator options. Use the first option, or the step plus Y shortcut, to generate notes, or use step plus X to clear all events in the pattern. Playing with those is pretty fun, but let's get back to the options. Here, we can randomize only the pitch of notes without changing their position or velocity. We can also randomize velocities only. Let me adjust this filter real quick. Finally, let's have a look at the generator settings. This is where you can set all the ranges for each parameter and gain better control over randomized notes. For example, here I'm setting the minimum velocity of generated notes, so I can generate a wider range of filter modulations. That's it for the generator. Now let's move to the next part, in which I will talk about modulations. Okay, so this is where we left off. Let's start by replacing our previously created velocity voice with a modulation voice. We can now start adding some modulation events in a similar way to how we did before with notes. Simply set the desired amount of modulation and press a step. Quick copy works here as well. Hold a step to copy it, then place it onto any other step. By holding the first and last pads, we can easily modify all notes at once. While holding step, press X to erase everything or press Y to generate new events. To avoid wasting an output, modulation voices let you program gate events. Simply tap step to switch to gate editing mode. Let's add a few steps there. And let's plug this extra gate output into Rumple to make a very simple hat. Modulation tracks can also be used to record incoming modulations from the CV inputs, or be used to output effects like LFOs or envelopes, as we will see in the next episode about MIDI effects. Now let's have a look at the raw editing mode, which we'll use to create some chords. To access raw editing, hold step and turn the encoder. In this mode, each pad shows only the events for the currently selected pitch value, making it ideal for chord programming. Let's stack a few notes on the same step to create a basic chord. There we go. Tap the step button to cycle through each note used in the pattern. Okay, now let's switch back to default editing mode so I can select the entire chord and make it a bit longer. Now, I will double the length of the pattern, copy my chord by holding it, place it on the second page and pitch it down by 2 semitones. Finally, let's also add an arpeggiator for reasons. Raw editing can also be very useful to program drums or simply to find a specific note in a busy pattern. Now, let's move on to the last section about learning notes from an external keyboard. My keyboard is plugged into Hermod Plus via MIDI. If I play a chord, it is instantly learned and can be placed on any step by simply pressing it. You can see the little note logo changing each time I'm adding a new note. Note learning also works with single note input and preserves velocity values. That concludes this video about the very basics of Hermod Plus. Thanks a lot for watching, and let me know in the comments if you want more details about specific functions. In the next episode, we'll explore the different effects, how to modulate them, mute them, and how to use pattern values. So stay tuned and see you soon!